The elevator doors slid shut with a soft hiss. Marcus Chen stood alone, his finger hovering over the button panel. Floor 15, his boss's office. The meeting that would change everything. 5 seconds. That's all it took for Marcus to make the decision that would haunt him for the next decade. As the elevator climbed, he pulled out his phone and deleted the email. The one with the safety report. The one that could have saved lives. Let me take you back to where it all began. Marcus was 32, a rising star at Meridian Construction. He'd worked his way up from a junior engineer to project manager in just 6 years. Smart, ambitious, and hungry for success. The kind of guy who stayed late, who said yes to every assignment, who believed that hard work would eventually pay off. The Riverside Plaza project was his big break, a 40-story residential tower in downtown Seattle, luxury condos with panoramic views of Puget Sound, the kind of project that could make a career. Marcus had been hand-picked to oversee the final phases of construction. Everything was going perfectly until Dr. Sarah Kim showed up. Dr. Kim was a structural engineer hired by the city to conduct routine safety inspections. She was thorough, methodical, and, unfortunately for Marcus, very good at her job. 3 weeks before the grand opening, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. The building's foundation had been compromised during construction. A series of shortcuts, taken to meet impossible deadlines, had created microfractures in the concrete. The building was still standing, but it was essentially a ticking bomb. Marcus received her preliminary report on a Tuesday morning. He read it twice, his coffee growing cold as the implications sank in. If this report went public, the project would be shut down immediately. The company would face lawsuits, investigations, and bankruptcy. His career would be over before it really began. But here's the thing about Dr. Kim's report. It was preliminary. She was planning to conduct additional tests before submitting her final findings to the city. That gave Marcus a window, a small one, but enough to make a choice that would define the rest of his life. The elevator reached the 15th floor. Marcus stepped out and walked toward his corner office. Richard Blackwood was on the phone, gesturing wildly as he spoke. Through the glass walls, he could see the scale model of Riverside Plaza sitting on the conference table. Tiny plastic people populated the miniature lobby, frozen in their perfect little world. Marcus knocked and entered. Blackwood ended his call and looked up with a smile. "Marcus, perfect timing. The mayor's office just called. They want to move up the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Apparently there's been some scheduling conflict with the governor's visit. We're looking at next Friday instead of the end of the month." Next Friday. That was 10 days away. Dr. Kim wouldn't have completed her additional testing by then. The building would open to residents before anyone knew about the foundation issues. Marcus felt his stomach drop. That's great news, sir," Marcus heard himself say. The words felt foreign in his mouth. "I knew you'd be excited. This is your moment, Marcus, your project. The press is going to be all over this. I'm thinking we put you front and center for the interviews. Young, brilliant engineer delivers Seattle's newest landmark ahead of schedule. It's a hell of a story." Marcus nodded, his mind racing. He thought about Dr. Kim's report, still sitting in his email inbox. He thought about the families who would soon be moving into those luxury condos. He thought about his own future, his dreams, everything he'd worked for.
"Sir, there's something I need to tell you," Marcus began, then stopped. Blackwood was looking at him expectantly. But Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from his girlfriend, Emma. "Dinner with my parents tonight. They're so proud of you. Dad keeps bragging to his golf buddies about his future son-in-law, the successful engineer." 5 seconds. That's how long Marcus stood there, weighing his options. Tell the truth and watch his career crumble, or stay silent and hope for the best. In those 5 seconds, he made a calculation that seemed rational at the time. The building had been standing for months without incident. Dr. Kim's concerns might be overblown. Maybe the additional testing would prove the structure was safe after all. Marcus deleted the email. Never mind, sir. I was just going to say how excited I am about the early opening. This is going to be incredible. Blackwood clapped him on the shoulder. That's the spirit. Now, let's talk about the media strategy. For the next hour, they planned the publicity campaign. Marcus smiled and nodded at all the right moments, but inside, he felt like he was drowning. Every time he tried to speak up, to tell the truth, he thought about Emma, about the ring he'd been saving for, about the promotion that was surely coming his way. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was a spectacular success. The mayor spoke about Seattle's bright future. Local news crews captured every moment. Marcus stood in his best suit, scissors in hand, as cameras flashed around him. He looked confident, successful, proud. Inside, he was dying. The first residents moved in 3 weeks later. Young professionals, growing families, retirees looking for a downtown lifestyle. Marcus drove by the building every day on his way to work, watching lights come on in windows, seeing children playing in the courtyard. Each time he told himself he'd made the right choice. The building was fine. Dr. Kim had been wrong. For 2 years, Marcus lived with his secret. He got the promotion. He married Emma in a beautiful ceremony overlooking the Sound. They bought a house in Queen Anne, started talking about kids. Life was good, or at least it looked good from the outside. But Marcus couldn't sleep. He'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining worst-case scenarios. He started avoiding downtown, taking longer routes to work, just so he wouldn't have to see Riverside Plaza. When Emma suggested they look at condos in the building, Marcus made excuses. Too expensive, too crowded, too many memories of work stress. The nightmares started in year 3. Always the same dream. He was standing in the lobby of Riverside Plaza, watching cracks spread across the walls like spider webs. The building would start to sway, and he'd try to warn people, but no sound would come out of his mouth. He'd wake up in a cold sweat, Emma asking if he was okay. Just work stress, he'd tell her. But it was so much more than that. Marcus began researching structural engineering in his spare time, becoming obsessed with foundation integrity and seismic safety. He read every article, every case study, every report about building collapses. The more he learned, the more terrified he became. Dr. Kim hadn't been wrong. If anything, she'd been conservative in her assessment. Year 4 brought the first signs of trouble. Residents started complaining about minor issues. Doors that wouldn't close properly, windows that stuck, hairline cracks in bathroom tiles. The building management dismissed these as normal settling, but Marcus knew better. The foundation was shifting, slowly, but inevitably.
He thought about coming forward then, about confessing what he'd done, but how do you tell 800 families that their homes might collapse? How do you explain that you've known for 4 years and said nothing? The legal implications alone were staggering. Marcus would face criminal charges, civil lawsuits, professional ruin. Emma would leave him. His parents would be devastated. So he stayed silent, and the guilt ate away at him like acid. Year 5 was when Marcus started drinking. Just a glass of wine with dinner at first, then 2, then a bottle. Emma noticed, of course. She suggested counseling, a vacation, maybe a career change. Marcus agreed to therapy, but couldn't bring himself to tell the truth. How do you explain to a therapist that you're complicit in what could become one of the worst building disasters in Seattle's history? The therapist diagnosed him with generalized anxiety disorder and prescribed medication. The pills helped with the panic attacks, but did nothing for the crushing weight of his secret. Marcus felt like he was living in a house of cards, waiting for the slightest breeze to bring everything crashing down. Years 6 and 7 blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights and mounting dread. Marcus became a shadow of his former self. His work suffered, his marriage strained. Emma begged him to tell her what was wrong, but Marcus couldn't find the words. How do you tell the person you love most that you're a fraud, a coward, a man who chose his career over human lives? The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd made his decision to protect his future, but that future was crumbling anyway. The success he'd fought so hard to preserve was slipping through his fingers like sand. Year 8 brought the first major incident. A water main burst in the building's basement, flooding the parking garage. The official cause was listed as aging infrastructure, but Marcus knew the truth. The shifting foundation had damaged the pipes. It was a warning sign, a preview of what was coming. That night, Marcus sat in his study with a bottle of whiskey and Dr. Kim's original report, which he'd printed and hidden in his desk drawer years earlier. He read it again, every damning detail, every prediction that was slowly coming true. He thought about calling her, about confessing everything, but what would be the point? The damage was done. The building was occupied. The best-case scenario now was a controlled evacuation and demolition. The worst was unthinkable. Marcus picked up his phone a dozen times that night, Emma's number on the screen. He wanted to tell her everything, to finally unburden himself of the secret that was killing him. But each time he put the phone down. Some truths are too heavy to share, even with the person you love most. Year 9 was when the cracks became visible. Not just hairline fractures in tiles, but actual structural damage. Cracks in the lobby walls, gaps around elevator doors, windows that no longer sat flush in their frames. The building management hired engineers to assess the damage, but they were looking for recent causes, not foundational issues that had been festering for nearly a decade. Marcus watched the news coverage with a mixture of terror and relief. Finally, people were paying attention. Finally, the truth might come out. But the engineers' preliminary findings focused on recent construction in the area, possible seismic activity, anything except the original foundation problems that Marcus knew were the real culprit.
He thought about sending an anonymous tip, about somehow directing the investigation toward the real issue. But any serious inquiry would eventually lead back to Dr. Kim's original report, and from there to Marcus himself. He was trapped in a web of his own making, watching helplessly as the situation spiraled toward disaster. The end came in year 10, on a rainy Thursday morning in March. Marcus was in his office when his phone rang. It was Emma, her voice shaking with panic. "Marcus, you need to turn on the news right now." He grabbed the remote and switched to the local news channel. The reporter was standing in front of Riverside Plaza, emergency vehicles surrounding the building. The headline at the bottom of the screen made Marcus's blood freeze. Downtown high-rise evacuated after structural collapse. The south wall of the building had partially collapsed during the night, taking out a section of the parking garage and damaging several ground floor units. Miraculously, no one had been killed, but dozens of residents were injured. The building was being evacuated immediately, all 800 units declared uninhabitable. Marcus sat in his office chair, watching his worst nightmare unfold on live television. The reporter was interviewing residents, families who had lost everything, children crying as they were led away from their homes. The camera panned across the damage, and Marcus could see exactly what Dr. Kim had predicted 10 years earlier. The foundation had finally given way. His phone rang again. This time it was his boss. "Marcus, I need you downtown immediately. The city is launching a full investigation into Riverside Plaza. They're going to want to review all the original construction documents, safety reports, everything. I need my best project manager on this." Marcus hung up without responding. He sat in the silence of his office, staring at the news coverage, and finally understood the true cost of his 5-second decision. It wasn't just about his career or his reputation. It was about the 800 families who had just lost their homes. It was about the children who would grow up remembering the day their building fell down. It was about the trust that had been shattered, the lives that had been disrupted, the community that had been torn apart. He thought about Dr. Kim, wondering if she was watching the news, if she remembered her report from a decade ago.
He thought about Emma, who would soon learn the truth about the man she'd married. He thought about his parents, who had been so proud of their successful son. Marcus opened his desk drawer and pulled out Dr. Kim's report. The pages yellowed with age. He read it one more time, every word a reminder of the choice he'd made and the consequences he'd been running from ever since. Then he picked up his phone and dialed the number for the Seattle Police Department. "I need to report a crime. My name is Marcus Chen, and 10 years ago, I covered up a safety report that could have prevented the Riverside Plaza collapse." The confession took 3 hours. Marcus told them everything, from the moment he received Dr. Kim's report to the 5 seconds in the elevator when he made his choice. He handed over the original documents, explained the timeline, and accepted full responsibility for his actions. The legal consequences were swift and severe. Marcus was charged with criminal negligence, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. He lost his engineering license, his job, and his freedom. The civil lawsuits from displaced residents would follow him for the rest of his life. But for the first time in 10 years, Marcus Chen could sleep at night.
The story of Riverside Plaza became a cautionary tale in engineering schools across the country, not just about structural integrity or safety protocols, but about the human cost of moral compromise, about how a single decision, made in a moment of weakness, can ripple outward like waves from a stone dropped in still water. Emma left him, of course. She couldn't understand how the man she'd loved and trusted could have kept such a devastating secret for so long. Marcus didn't blame her. He'd made his choice in that elevator, and every day since had been a consequence of that choice. As Marcus sat in his prison cell, writing letters to the families affected by the collapse, he often thought about those 5 seconds. 5 seconds that had seemed so insignificant at the time, so easily justified. 5 seconds that had cost him everything he'd thought he wanted and everything he'd actually needed. The truth, Marcus learned, has a way of surfacing eventually, like water finding cracks in a foundation. It seeps through the smallest openings and grows stronger over time. You can delay it, redirect it, even ignore it for a while, but you can never truly stop it. And sometimes the weight of carrying a lie becomes heavier than the consequences of telling the truth. Marcus Chen made his decision in 5 seconds. He spent 10 years living with the consequences, and he would spend the rest of his life trying to make amends for the choice he made in that elevator when he chose his future over the safety of 800 families. The building was eventually demolished. The site turned into a memorial park for the families who lost their homes. A small plaque near the entrance reads, "In memory of trust broken and lessons learned. May we always choose courage over convenience." Marcus never saw the memorial, but he heard about it from his lawyer, and for the first time since that day in the elevator, he smiled. Not because he was happy, but because he finally understood that some consequences, painful as they are, can lead to something better. The decision took 5 seconds. The consequences lasted 10 years, but the lesson, Marcus hoped, would last forever.